You're seeing the overwhelming celebrations in Israel. And again, we're going to have people coming out alive. I'm convinced that President Trump were not elected. This deal was stuck. So this really is a Reagan moment. We're quite excited about it.
A Reagan moment. That was Mike Waltz, Trump's pick for national security advisor. With a ceasefire and hostage deal between Israel and Hamas set to take effect in the final hours of Joe Biden's presidency, the deal has some drawing parallels to the 1981 release of American hostages held by Iran. Those captives were freed just moments after Ronald Reagan took the oath of office. They went first to Europe and arrived back in the United States a week later. Like Biden, it was a hostage crisis that President Jimmy Carter had worked on tirelessly in the remaining months of his presidency. With the exact role of their successors subject to debate, ultimately it was President Reagan who welcomed them home, Carter calling him the morning of his inauguration to tell him the good news.
Governor, good morning. How you doing? I placed a call for earlier. I just want to let you know that the planes are at the end of the runway. The Iranians were notified about roughly 25 minutes ago. I'll see you later on for the ceremonies. God bless you. Thank you, sir.
Wow. Joining me now, former Trump National Security Advisor, former U.S. Ambassador to the UN, John Bolton. Mr. Ambassador, very grateful to have you on the program. Thanks for being here.
Glad to be here.
You have, of course, emerged as a Trump critic in the wake of your experience with him. I'm interested to know, do you think President-elect Trump deserves credit for this deal between Israel and Hamas?
Well, I think he's responsible for the deal. I wouldn't take credit with it. I think it's a very bad mistake by Israel. I think they're acquiescing because of the pressure that Trump put on the Netanyahu government. I don't think this deal was good over the last 7 months. The outlines are basically what was put out by the Biden administration in May, if I'm not mistaken. And it doesn't make it any better, the fact that Trump now endorses it. In fact, it contradicts a basic element of Trump's pretty successful efforts in his first term to get American hostages released, which is you don't swap hostages. The Israelis have had a long policy of doing it. I think it's been a long mistake for Israel. I think this is the worst time to give Hamas 6 weeks of a ceasefire or any Israeli withdrawal from Gaza, and I'm very worried it's going to have long-term implications. But I think Netanyahu's doing it because Biden only has 4 days left in office, and he's got 4 years of Trump to face. But it's the wrong way to start.
So you come down in many ways with the people to the right of Netanyahu and his government on this question?
Well, I come down where Mike Waltz is, at least in this text of an interview with Dan Senor yesterday. He said, I don't like any deal with these sick, evil sons of whatever, and we should never, ever reward the horrendous acts of October the 7th, and said that what you really need to do is cut out the cancer that Hamas represents. By giving a 6-week ceasefire, if it happens, you're giving Hamas the chance to gain hundreds of potential new fighters from the Palestinians being released. Remember, Yahya Sinwar, the now deceased leader of Hamas in Gaza, was a prisoner released by Israel. The terms of this deal, numbers are a little hazy, but is roughly 50 Palestinian prisoners for every Israeli hostage, some of whom, by the way, are going to be dead. And we don't know how many of the 100 that Hamas is still believed to hold are actually still alive, which demonstrates the barbarity and the cynicism of Hamas playing on the understandable emotions of hostage families for months now, knowing that the hostages were dead. The only negotiation you should have with Hamas is to find any of them who might be left to sign the unconditional surrender. That's the only negotiation I would have with this brutal terrorist group.
All right. Sir, I want to ask you about something that we're seeing here at home with the former president who invoked your name, the former president-elect, invoked your name in a post on his Truth Social platform overnight. And it seems to be something of a blacklist for people who worked for or were supported by a number of figures in the Republican Party, including you. Trump wrote this, quote, "In order to save time, money, and effort, it would be helpful if you would not send or recommend to us people who worked with or are endorsed by," and he calls you dumb as a rock, "John Bolton." This is a picture slate of all of the others who are also included there. What is your response to this?
Well, you know, it's very typical of Trump to open his mouth without knowing what he's talking about. And I bear no ill will to the people who once worked for me, who have already been announced for jobs in the Trump administration. I'm not going to name them and get them into trouble. Or the many others that I'm aware of are still trying to get jobs in the Trump administration. So I think that list he's put out there is a pretty good company to be in, and I can't wait for the intrepid journalists at CNN and elsewhere to reveal all the names of these people who have worked for people on the blacklist.
What does it say to you that this is how Donald Trump is approaching this as he is set to take office in just a handful of days?
Sure. Look, there are a lot of people, and it's normal in a transition. The incoming president's team and their supporters are just in the rapture. Everything's fine. Everything's going to be okay. All things will happen. Everything will be a victory. And for those who say that Trump is reformed, that he's grown, that he's going to be a normal president, this is the kind of thing, like the Mar-a-Lago press conference last week, that demonstrates he hasn't changed at all. It's going to be 4 years, just like the last 4 years.
Sir, while I have you, I also want to ask you about some of the confirmation battles that are going to play out on Capitol Hill, namely one that has, for whatever reason, flown a little bit under the radar compared to, for example, Pete Hegseth for Defense Secretary, and that's Tulsi Gabbard as the Director of National Intelligence. Would you urge Republicans to oppose her nomination? What are your concerns? And do you think if Democrats were to try and organize opposition against her, that they would find some traction with their Republican counterparts?
Well, I must say the Democratic performance in the confirmation process so far has been pretty pathetic. It's like they don't know how to play the game anymore. But I have thought of all of Trump's nominees, they cover a wide spectrum. 3 are actually dangerous. One was Matt Gaetz, he's gone. The other 2 are Tulsi Gabbard and Kash Patel. Mediocrity has its place in government, we know that all too well, but dangerous people, in the case of the intelligence community, national security, and law enforcement in particular, there are 2 more, Patel and Gabbard, who should not be confirmed.
All right. Ambassador John Bolton, I'm very grateful to have you on the show, sir. Thanks very much for coming on with us.